Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of r/malicious compliance. In today's episode you want to talk goals. I can do that. My appointment was cancelled for being 5 minutes late. I guess I have to reschedule. ID, please. I work here. Bull sh*t. ID, please. Before we get started, be sure to subscribe so that you will never miss a video. So let's get started. You want to talk goals. I can do that. Don't worry, MC comes at the end, but you have to know what led to it. It's worth the read. I worked in sales back during the Great Recession. During that time there were a ton of people looking for jobs and very few jobs to be had. Therefore, employers like mine often saw employees as expendable. Our shop was visited bi-weekly by the corporate officers. They would hold sales data meetings that showed comparisons between how each salesperson did. Not only was this super embarrassing for those who were struggling to get sales during the recession, but you could almost always predict who was getting canned that day by corporate. The store itself was run by some pretty cool people, but they too were under a lot of pressure to perform. We didn't get commission until we justified our minimum wage paycheck. If you didn't justify your paycheck, you had to be prepared for that private meeting with the corporate rep to get fired. Your justification was based on the commission rate of the item. So for example, if you sold a $700 item, and it paid $14 commission, you just justified $14 of your pay. This, understandably, put the employees on edge and created a desperate and cutthroat environment. Oftentimes you would be seconds from closing a sale and another salesperson would claim you poached their client. I sold them this $1 accessory 2 weeks ago. Therefore this $400 item is my sale. Sometimes clients would walk out due to the arguments this created. Anyway, I was a relative newbie that year, which worked in my favor. I didn't have existing bad blood with the other salespeople, even if they already saw me as competition. So I found a niche in the store, maintained the stock, and waited for the clients to come to me. I knew that clients could smell desperation on my colleagues, and would decline help. So by the time they reached me, I just struck up a casual conversation. This worked really well. Most people were willing to work with me because I didn't pressure them to buy and I asked them about their day. I could tell the difference between browsers and buyers, but I treated both with courtesy. A browser could be a buyer tomorrow, so I started racking up sales this way. I also noticed that the company required each employee to sell 2 service plans a week. These were gravy and pure commission, or, in our case, justification. The problem was most salespeople would wait until closing the sale or ringing up to push these. By then the client was unlikely to be open to add-ons. I tried a different approach. I introduced browsers and buyers to our in-house repair person, who was a stand-up guy. I mentioned that no product was worth buying without the plan, so it was best to factor it in when shopping. This worked extremely well. I started selling 15 to 20 plans a week. This, of course, set off alarm bells with my coworkers. They would see client after client walk out with yellow service slips with my name on it. To them this would only make the bi-weekly meetings even harder. I completely understood this. Now, here is the thing. Could I have kept all of this for myself? Sure, but the workplace was so toxic, the commission was so minimal, and I felt so bad for these people who were just trying to survive that I started trying to build goodwill. It was the Great Recession after all. When my coworker was in a sales slump or had a bunch of sick days, I would ring some of my sales under them. They were often extremely grateful for this. I also started doing coffee runs for my department, even though I was pretty broke. Over time, the toxicity waned and we began tag teaming sales. Soon other department members would do the coffee runs, and we had a much more relaxed atmosphere, which helped keep clients comfortable and more willing to work with us. The store manager was thrilled with this. He started doing coffee runs as well and patted our department on the back as the yellow service plan slips began pouring in. However, all the while corporate kept showing up, asking for more and more. Even though we actually almost met the previous year's sales, there was the inevitable terror. January. Anyone who has worked in retail sales knows that January is when returns happen. This counted against your justification. To make matters worse, the economy tightened even more, leading to post-Christmas layoffs in other fields. So a huge wave of Christmas returns created a deluge of negative sales that just about destroyed everyone. Corporate held their first bi-weekly meeting of January and chastised us for not preserving the sales. However, we all knew that people who were coming to us with returns were straight up apologizing because they lost their jobs, and every penny counted. Within days, 2 of our department members were canned and replaced with fresh-faced teenagers. Corporate also noted that coffee drinking on shift was unprofessional and that no more drink runs would be permitted, even though we only did it when one of us was on break to get the coffee and the store was at or near empty. Within days, nearly all of the goodwill was completely undone. My co-workers were back to desperate sales tactics, fearful that they would get the axe next meeting. By this time I had managed to get a job with another company to get a few more hours on the side. I had worked for the first place for about a year at this point, and I saw that there was no changing the system they used to bully workers. So I asked my second job at night after the corporate meeting if they would be willing to put me on full-time. To my surprise, they agreed. Full-time work was extremely hard to find. With that I had my out. I went to my store manager the next day and gave my 2 weeks notice. He too was upset with how corporate basically steamrolled us, and he understood why I was leaving. Over the next 2 weeks I gave every single sale to my co-workers, knowing they needed it more than I did. I also divvied up my client list and any unfinished sales to my department members. Finally, this is where MC came in. 2 weeks went by and I was on my last day. It was also the corporate day-to-day. However, I had strategically asked for early enough hours to be able to clock out before the meeting. So I clocked out, handed my badge to the store manager and began walking to the exit. In comes the corporate bigwig. He was early. He stops me and says, "Can I have a word with you in my office?" I shrugged and said sure. Now I was about dead sure he was going to try to lay me off for performance issues. According to my data, I had sold literally nothing in the last 2 weeks because I had given it all away. However, I was already clocked out on this, my last day, so it didn't concern me. He walks me into the reserved office for corporate visitors. Yes, they had that, and it is just as oppressive as it sounds, and pulls out my file for the previous year. He says you and I need to talk about goals with a giant grin. He walks me through my sales sheets. He notes that service plan sales shot up tenfold since I had arrived, that I was often in the top sales numbers in the store. He enthusiastically started his pitch. Picture this, you become the top regional salesperson. If you could sell 15 more service plans each week, you would beat even the New York branch, which has 4 times the volume. If you sold another $5,000 worth of product, which would be easy for you, you would be our top performer. Whoa la la, a gold star. Thanks, coach. He then said, now that's our goals for you, tell me your goals for yourself. Now, when he said goals, he didn't actually mean my goals. He meant, how am I going to up the ante for them? How many service plans or sales numbers did I think I could hit? I, of course, had no interest in that. Would these new goals come with additional pay? I asked. Well, we can't increase your base rate, that's against company policy. However, if you sold 15 more service plans and $5,000 more product, think of the commission you would make. So what are your goals? Enter malicious compliance. My goal is to leave the company. Today, the look on his face went from enthusiasm to surprise to rage. The kind of face he used at most bi-weekly meetings. You do understand that the job market is terrible right now. If you were to leave today, all of the great work you did for our company over the last year would be for nothing. We would never give you a recommendation, he said, barely containing his voice. This confirmed a few things. Not only was he out of touch that I was already quitting, he had no idea that I wasn't even an employee anymore as of 20 minutes before. I don't wish any ill will here, but you asked me what my goals are. Is it okay if I leave? He says, I will escort you out. So he storms, with me toward the exit of the store. He turns to the store manager and demands give me his badge and split any remaining unfinished sales. He doesn't work for US anymore. To which my manager, confused, replied, I know. He already quit 2 weeks ago. He fished in his desk and handed the corporate officer my badge. The officer got extremely flustered by this. As I started to walk out, he shouted, you need to clock out now. Again, my store manager said he already did. Is everything okay? That's the last thing I heard from that corporate officer as I walked out the door and trotted to my car. It didn't wreck the company, they are still in business. Last I checked, not a single member of my team is still left there. And the store manager gave me plenty of good recommendations, though I doubt he is still there either. Either way, it did feel good to hit my goal. My appointment was cancelled for being 5 minutes late. I guess I have to reschedule. This happened about 4 years ago, when I got a summer job at my university. The job was working for professors that I had worked with before, and they asked me last minute to teach a summer workshop to 9th and 10th graders. So with less than 2 weeks before the camp starts, I have a bunch of paperwork to do first, including clearances that say I can work with kids. One of these is an official FBI check for which they need my fingerprints. Well, I needed to do the physical fingerprinting right away in order to get the result in time. Luckily, I was able to book a fingerprinting appointment for that Friday. Book 24 hours in advance, as required, which would be just barely enough time to get the result. That Friday, I catch the subway to campus and it's atrociously slow. I'll admit I should have planned for this. The subway here is always behind. Anyway, I end up slightly late getting to campus, so I literally run to the police station and enter the front room at exactly 5 minutes after my appointment time. I know this because, as I stepped through the door, I felt my phone buzz with what turned out to be "Your appointment has been canceled" email. I speak to the security/cop behind bulletproof glass inside, and I learn the appointment was canceled after he checks my confirmation number. Apparently they are automatically canceled if you're not checked in within 5 minutes. Obviously this is outrageous, but I'm usually a patient guy. I ask if I can book a new appointment. That's no good since it would have to be Monday or later. So I grab a coffee from across the street and return to sit inside the police station to try and solve this with some Googling while I slip into a more and more frantic state of frustration. I can't find anywhere in the city that can fingerprint me before Monday. But here's what really pushed me over the edge. While I'm sitting there, at this point 30 minutes past my appointment time, someone else comes in for fingerprints. She shows up 5 minutes early. They take her in immediately, and she's out before her appointment was even scheduled to begin. The entire thing took her about 2 minutes. I point out to the cop behind the glass that clearly someone could see me right now, because her appointment is already over. Why can't I have the current slot? But the cop insists that since my appointment was canceled, my registration info was no longer in the system and I can't be seen today. That's when the idea comes to me, and I confirm with him that showing up early is not a problem, because they would have my app and registration info in the system. You see where I'm going with this. So I quietly sit back down and take out my phone. About 10 minutes later, I calmly approach him again and say hello. I have a new appointment to be fingerprinted. I'm about 72 hours early. I have never seen such an exasperated sigh in my life. But he checked my new confirmation number and everything was in order. Within 10 minutes, I was walking back out after getting fingerprinted. ID, please? I work here. Bull SH*T. ID, please. This happened 4 years ago when I was starting my senior year of college. I started working at this really popular bar at my university as a cook, fresh out of a crappy catering job. It was the beginning of the school year, and thus the beginning of college football season. I was ecstatic because I had just turned 21 a week after I started there, and I got free drinks as well. As dumb as that statement is, this is important later. About 3 weeks into the job, our college had their first home game, and as usual, the entire university is absolute pandemonium between traffic and everyone and their mother heading for the restaurants before the game. My shift started after the game, so I started heading to the bar around that afternoon. Remember when I said the bar was popular? There was a line of like 16 or 18 half-drunk college students waiting outside the door to get in while a bored-looking security guard took their IDs. Seeing as how I was new here, I wasn't sure what to expect on a game day or how busy it was. Normally I would use the back entrance to get into work, but the entire back lot, and by extension the back entrance, was blocked off to be used as a party area, dance floor, so the front entrance was my only option. I started making my way to the front entrance to walk through, when all of a sudden the guard stopped me. This woman had that permanent scowl of someone who doesn't get paid enough to deal with drunks, along with that mum attitude. Guard, where the hell do you all think you're going? Me, I work here, my shift's starting. Guard, nice try. Now get in line. Me, ma'am, I'm not kidding, I actually work here. Guard, you got any kind of ID or badge that proves it? Probably worth noting that I didn't even have a uniform. The cooks wear dish shirts over regular clothes. Me, sigh here. Hands over ID. Guard, okay, you're 21. Still ain't gonna let you skip the line unless you prove you work here. Me, getting irritated, look, can you just get the manager or something so he can prove it? Guard, you see this line? I ain't going anywhere. If you want in, y'all gonna have to wait in line. At this point, the students are getting peed off at me supposedly holding the line up. I'm getting peed off because I can't even go to work without being late, and I was running out of options. That's when I realized I was late, but that turned out to be my saving grace. My manager Chris called me around that moment. Chris, OP, are you almost here? Me, I'm actually here, but security's not letting me in. Chris, oh for foo, Jim me a sec. He hung up and came outside a second later. He chewed out the guard for not even attempting to check with him to see if I was telling the truth, and making me late, and he got me into the bar to start working. Chris and I had a good laugh about me getting carded to go to work, and the fact that this would have been a lot more complicated if I didn't turn 21 a couple weeks before. Ah, good times. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.